Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the virtual program today, Writing Winning Grants with Dr. April Shaffner. I am Brittany Spillman, and I serve as the Carey Center Director of Community and Collegiate Programs. Before we begin, I would like to take a moment to thank this year's sponsors. This virtual program's presenting sponsor is the Walker Area Community Foundation. The Walker Area Community Foundation is a nonprofit grant-making organization building the permanent capital needed to daily facilitate community conversations, inspire action, and empower partners. This year's community and collegiate program sponsors have pledged to support our efforts in providing meaningful programming in the nonprofit sector. Thank you to Auburn University Outreach, the East Alabama Community Foundation, the River Region United Way, Auburn University Outreach Office of Public Service, Social U, the Drummond Thorne Stooks Fund for Excellence, and a community service grant made possible by State Senator Randy Price and State Representative Joe Lover. April is a grant writing consultant with Simple Grants, a full-service grant consulting firm. Simple Grants has been in business for 13 years with a $248.9 million in client awards. April has 12 years of professional experience in grant consultation, research, writing, and management, with a total of 31 years working for and with nonprofit organizations, faith-based organizations, local government, and institutions of higher education. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Shaffner as she shares about writing winning grants.
Thank you very much, Brittany. It's wonderful to be here, and I am going to share my screen. So if you have questions along the way, if you would just put those in chat, and then we'll have a Q&A time at the very end. More than likely, I'll probably answer your question as we go. So that way, if I do, we can just skip that one. But everybody, oftentimes, I appreciate the brave hearts who ask a question, because usually everybody else has the same question too. So please feel free to do that. And then let me do my little share screen here, and we will get started. I'm excited to see so many people on. It's wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for your time. Okay. All right. Here's our lovely cover screen. And let's get rolling. So I am going to talk to you about writing winning grants. And that's the slide that just tells a little bit about my company, Simple Grants. It's just one of the many organizations I've worked with over the years where my focus was grants. And I love Simple Grants. I can't say enough about them. We are international. So primarily we're here in the United States. Really started in the Southeast, and Alabama is where our founder is from. And she has a lot of clients, kind of started our base there. But we're now in 26 states in the United States, and then we have some international clients. And we also have international team members, which is really great. So our primary focus is grant identification, grant writing, and grant management. This is a little bit about me, and Brittany already shared the basic intros, but you can also see some sample wins that I've posted there, and then my education and experience. And I've been blessed to work with a variety, like most of us in the nonprofit world. We kind of wear all kinds of hats and do all kinds of things, including grant writing. I've been blessed to work with a variety of different organizations, and thank you to each of you. I don't know the exact population you serve, but I know your heart. And most folks that well, anybody working in the nonprofit world, they're not there for the bucks. They're there for the impact that they can make on their community. And I greatly appreciate that work. Okay, so our key objectives for today are that we're going to review some essential tips and best practices. And we're going to talk about planning, research, and writing when it comes to grants. You can see the lovely pyramid down here, and planning is the foundation for everything that we do. And we continue to plan through the whole life cycle of the grant. And then research is next, and you do have to put quite a bit of time into research to make sure we're getting the best grant for what we want to do. And then writing is at the top. And so sometimes we get really excited. We find a funding opportunity and we want to jump straight to writing. And that's not always, actually not really not ever the best way to go about it. I know we get excited, but we need to back up and make sure we've done all of our core work first. And this little light bulb let me get my pointy thing here. I use very technical professional terms like pointy thing. My husband makes fun of me. He said, "You write grants?" Anyway, this little light bulb, when you see that, that means here is a tip or a best practice. And so the first one that we're going to talk about, the win is in the plan. So plan, plan, plan to win, win, win. Okay. I love this. This is one of the best graphics I think that part of our team has developed, but we're going to really stay up here in this upper left-hand quadrant. It's a pre-award phase, and we're going to talk about grant research and grant writing. But you can see this is the whole grant life cycle that we're not going to talk about all that today. And then I made a list for you that lists all the pre-award phase activities or items that we need to think about. And the first side, the left side of the list is about planning and research, and the right side is about planning and writing. And so I do want to let you know that if you don't know this already, grant work is work. So I've had a few folks that were brand new in the past to grants, and they're like, "Give me the free money." Yeah, there's no free money. You're going to work and earn this. If you get a grant award, you've put in your time, and you're going to continue to put in your time because you're going to implement it, and you're going to manage it, and you're going to do all the reporting and everything all the fun things that go along with getting a grant, whether that is at the foundation, like it could be a local small foundation grant, all the way up to a federal grant. You still have to do all of the things that are required to make sure that you tell whoever that grantor is that you're using their money as a good steward. So they're responsible for showing that they're using their funds as a good steward, and they expect you to give them the information so that they can pass that on to the people who are watching that money. Budget it. If you don't already have grants as a revenue stream in your budget, consider adding that. Before you really jump into the grant world, get your board members on board by having it in an approved budget. You know what? Next year, 5% or 10% of our revenue is going to come from grants, because at some point, if you don't do that, you're not going to, first of all, they don't know what you're doing. They haven't approved for you to do all that work because it takes time. And they're like, "Why are you in here looking for researching budgets when you need to be out there doing whatever?" So if the whole organization, now not everybody's going to love you doing grants, but they will love it if you can get some money in the door. So just make it a part of your system, make it a part of your organization. And it is a long-term investment. I know sometimes foundations or any organization that is new to the grant world, they want to say, "Well, let's try one and see what happens." First time out of the gate, it will be wonderful if you win. That's fabulous. But if you lose, then you lose people's enthusiasm, and they're like, "We didn't get any money. We're not going to do that anymore." So if you approach it from the very beginning, this is a long-term investment. This is going to be part of our organization as we grow and move forward. I mean, it's a marathon, not a sprint. If you have not operated at the federal level, so if you've never you've never applied for a federal grant or even a state grant, there are some things that you have to do before you can apply. You have to have a sam.gov registration. It is renewed annually. If you can operate a nonprofit organization, you can register for SAM. You just go on there and follow the steps to register organization, and you will get a unique entity identification number. And that's kind of like a social security number for your organization. But you have to have that number in order to apply for every federal grant and most state grants. It just tells the federal government who you are. You're official in their system. They know that who you are as an organization, that you have your 501c3, or that you're a government entity, or whatever status your entity is, you're officially registered. And you do have to have that number before you can apply for federal grants. And there's also a system called grants.gov. Within grants.gov, you have to register. It's pretty easy registration process, and you have to identify I'll say two, always, two people in your organization to be an authorized organization representative. Make sure it's someone who pays attention to their email. And the same for sam.gov. Sometimes we want to put our director or the president of the board, but they're also doing 5 billion other things. And honestly, they're out of pocket a lot and it's challenging. They may not check their email. And not to say that, I mean, they're just doing too many other things. So it has to be when you're dealing with sam.gov and grants.gov, make sure it's someone who can do business on behalf of your organization and that also is present. If you get a message, it's really important that you respond quickly. So that's what we want to make sure that is happening there. So we'll move on from that. These other items I'm going to talk to as we go through our slides, but I just bolded the ones on here that I wanted to touch base right now. And I want to say celebrate. Celebrate every step along the way. You don't have to have a big party, but be an encourager for your team. It's really important. Sometimes when we're doing this kind of work, part of what we do as nonprofits, we love working with our target population. We love being engaged in events, or we love making sure that people are getting the services they need or the things that they need. But we may not necessarily love the paperwork part, or maybe you do. If you do, that's great, but not everyone on your team does. And grant writing is just really a lot of this. You're in front of your screen and you're doing a lot of research and writing and connecting with funders. So just encourage folks and keep it being as positive as you can, the process, because you will lose some of your, please let me know if you're 100%. I've never heard of anybody being 100% on getting the awards. That would be heavenly. And if you know how to do that, I want to come to your training. But most of the time, you're not going to get 100% of the grants that you put out there. So it's important to that along the way, just through the process of grants, that you make that, and it's not always going to be fun, but at least an encouraging process, that you've got somebody on the team that's smiling and saying, we can do this, and just keep moving forward. So develop a grant team. You need a fiscal person on there. You need at least one person on there that can do business on behalf of your organization. You need you on there because you're excited about the getting some grants and getting some dollars in your pocket for your target population. And then make sure that you don't leave out your program person, because what I have found is sometimes there's several layers between who the grant writer is and who's actually implementing the programming or spending the money and making sure that it's doing what you asked for it to do. So make sure you have a program coordinator or someone that knows what's happening on the front line as part of your team, because they're going to help make your application so much stronger and tell the real story. Sometimes we can tell the high level story, but let's get that person who's really out there doing part of the work that also you think would be a good fit with your grant team. Make sure you analyze that guidance. And that means sometimes there's no guidance. Sometimes you have a grant and it's just a simple application that you just type in the information, and that's fine. But when you start looking at bigger foundation grants, or you start looking at state or federal grants, there will be guidance. And it may come to you in the form of a notice of funding opportunity, or the term solicitation, or an RFP, or sometimes it just says instructions. Whatever documentation they give you, review it thoroughly and then review it thoroughly again. It's very important that you analyze that guidance and develop a work plan. And I'm going to show you a work plan. And that's one of the documents that I'm sending home with you, is a sample work plan. I am very much a list person. If you're not, you're going to have to kind of force yourself when it comes to grants, because especially bigger grants, there's so many pieces and parts. Don't allow yourself to fall behind. Stay on time, give yourself a target date, and stay on time along the whole process. So if you are like me and you just love project management, you're going to love developing that work plan for your grant. And then we're going to celebrate again. So celebrate, celebrate, celebrate. I'm going to tell you a quick story before we move on, just because, just get it. I want to talk about mindset when it comes to doing grant work. And here's just an example. So many years ago, back when there was no internet, there were no telephones, we had telegraphs. So that long ago, there were two salesmen, and they really were salesmen at that time. I don't know if they had saleswomen back then, but so these two salesmen, they were shoe salesmen, and they traveled overseas to this remote village. They were both from different companies, and they got to this remote village, and they were checking out, the potential for selling shoes there. And the first salesman sent a telegraph back to his office, and it said, horrible news. No one here has shoes. And the second salesman sent back a telegraph to his company and said, wonderful news. No one here has shoes yet. So we want to be the wonderful news salespeople when it comes to grants. So just hang on to that story. Make sure you stay in the wonderful news avenue. And, another whole training some other time, I'll come and talk to you about what do we do when we lose a grant and how do we turn that into a win. So let's move forward. Okay, so where do I find this funding? There's money out there. Some of it's under government grants, which could be federal, state, or local. And some of it's under private grants, which can be foundations, corporations, or grant-making public charities. This is a cool slide. It lists all 26 of the federal agencies that have grant programs. And I gave you one tip down here at the bottom. Right now, the Institute of Museums and Library Services has their museum grants open. So if you're connected with the museum in any way, or you got a buddy that's a director of a museum, make sure they're aware that, and you can go to this site, you can just type in Institute of Museums. They open pretty much annually mid-August and close mid-November. So you still have time to pursue these. And there's different levels. So, you can do it for smaller museums, larger museums. There's some different categories. Like there's one that's just specific to African American that you have to have, African American history. There's one that's specific to Native American history. So go and check those out if you're in any way associated with a museum. All right, private types of grants, foundation. So private foundations are really cool because they have their own funds or endowments. They're managed by trustees or directors most of the time right there in your community. They are established to aid educational, social, religious, scientific, or other charitable activities, and they have to disclose their giving through a 990 form. And we're going to look at the 990 form because there's two places on there that I go to every time that if I'm looking at a foundation, I look at their 990 and I go to those two spots to determine if this is going to be a right fit for me in my organization. And I'll show you those examples in just a minute. Some other types of private grants are corporation and grant-making public charities. One of the things cool about corporations is those will be local. A lot of those are local too. If you're I don't care if you're a small or a big organization, I'd get all the money I could out of local corps. So check Big Lots, check Walmart, check Target, go to Chick-fil-A, go to anywhere locally that has a charitable arm or a grant option for you, and apply for that. A lot of my smaller organizations, I don't write this for them. It's a one-page sheet. Target, you can get a $200 gift card. So there are things that you don't want to pass up, and it might just take a few minutes of your time. And then with your larger grants, bigger applications, that's where you want to pull your team together and really make sure that you're polished and you've got all your things in a row. So this is a cool slide. Private giving. And the source is listed in the lower corner here. So you can go to that every year and it updates. So you can pull that information yourself moving forward. But you can see that 557 billion, I'm tripping over this big number here, is what Americans gave to charities in 2003. That's a lot of money. So what I don't want you to miss is the giving by corporations and the giving by foundations. So giving by corporations, 36 billion in 2023, and giving by foundations 103 billion in 2023. And you can see that all of these numbers are increasing over 2022. And so if you're not applying for corporate or foundation private giving through their grants or their charitable arms, then you're potentially missing out on 25% of the total contributions that are being made here in America. So you don't want to, I mean, that's a big chunk, it's a big percentage, 25%. We don't want to miss out on that avenue of potential revenue for our organization. Grant ready checklist. This is one of your handouts that you're going to get as well. It doesn't look exactly like this. I think it's got a big check mark on the top, but our little light bulb down here says grant makers don't just fund good programs, but good organizations. Get your docs in a row. And so if you don't already have a centralized grant folder, get it started. Make sure you can share that among your grant team members and that people can put documentation in there and that someone's taking charge of keeping it in order. And so you can easily go to, hey, where's our standard documents that we might need when we're preparing grant narratives, or where's our organization documents? You know, every time you want to write a grant, you don't want to have to be searching for your IRS letter that says that you're a 501c3. You don't want to be searching for all this stuff all the time. So start getting those things and keeping them up to date. A W-9, it has to be updated every year. Go ahead and just make that a standard practice. It's in there. Whoever's writing your grants can pull that when you need to. One of the things that sometimes we don't do really well is tell about our impact. So I would encourage you to develop a one-page impact, like one picture, boom. And it's got some stats on there, it's got some photos on there, or some graphics or something that tells what you're doing in the community, how many people you served, how much money you spent on this, this, and this, so that very easily, if I'm a panelist or I'm a board member and I'm considering giving you money, I don't have to question, well, what did they do with their, 100,000 they had last year? They had 100,000 in revenue. I can see their budget, and I'm not really seeing, I see they have these great programs. They've got program information, but I'm not seeing the impact. Everybody has a program. Everybody has a program. Everybody that's here today has a target population that you're serving that is important, that needs help in some form or fashion. And we could all share what we're doing and really to ourselves sound like we're really justifying the need for money. But I got to show how that is translating over into people being helped. So I have to have a head count. I got to have the money that was spent, and I need some outcomes. And outcomes is really like people are employed that weren't employed before. Or now we've got children that can play sports because we gave them adaptive equipment. And before, they weren't able to participate in the sports at their school. So you got to tell that story all the way through and make it simple and easy to see on an impact report and keep that updated annually. Make sure you have a website. Everybody can create a website. If you can run a nonprofit and deal with nonprofit paperwork, you can create a website, or you got somebody that you can get to volunteer to create it. Tell your story on your website. So again, if I'm looking through your application for funding and I want to check you out as an organization, I'm going to try to find you online. So I also need to put on your social media. So make sure you have a social media presence and that you state that on your website and you state it in your application, even if they don't ask for it. Say, hey, we make sure we tell our story and the impact that we have in the community on social media. It's a sentence. It's one sentence in your narrative to let them know. And they don't, some applications will ask for that and some won't. Go ahead and give it to them. So you want to stand out. Another way to stand out is in your leadership and your resumes. So oftentimes with foundation grants, they will want resumes of either the people that are in leadership or especially the key people that will be implementing the program. So if you write for program funding, they want to know who's running that program. They also want to know who's in charge of like admin, making sure that everything goes right. Please don't send them a resume of an employee that they developed 15 years ago and that hasn't been updated and you're just putting it in there to check off the box resume. Take the time ahead of time, and this is getting all your docs in a row to get people, either you do it or do it in coordination with them. This is somewhere you can, it's one of the spots you can shine that a lot of people miss. So look for spots that instead of checking a box, you can really stand out as an organization. So you're going to have your program coordinator tell a very recent thing of what they're doing that also aligns with what you're asking money for, so that the people that are going to give you money want to trust that you're going to use it correctly and that you have the right people in place to do that. And so here's a spot to shine. Another spot to shine is with your board of directors list. Sometimes foundations will ask you, or grantors will ask you for your list. Always they want your board list. A mistake that I've seen made is you'll get a name and then a bio, like a whole page bio. Don't do that. You can put that on your website, but what you want to give your funder is the name, contact information. Make it specific to that person. This is going to a board of people that might know someone on that list. And they may email, hey, Bob, I just saw you on the board and you guys are asking for $100,000. I'd love to have a cup of coffee and hear about this program. So make sure your board members know that you're applying for this funding, and they can be ready for those potential contacts. Make sure that they put employer affiliation. You don't have to give anything other than ABC business, just the name of their current employer or where they retired from. It's another way to connect. And then an address. And address isn't huge. I mean, it's okay if you just use your organization address, but it's really better. It makes it more personal if you use theirs. This is not going online. You're not giving out anybody's personal identifying information to anyone other than this board, that you're asking them to trust you with their money. So let's start the trust factor first and give them information that will help them potentially connect with someone that they might want to ask a question for. They may not want to contact you. They might want to contact Bob because they saw, hey, he works at Eastman. I used to work at Eastman. I'll holler at him. So if they can make those kind of connections, it's just one more little step toward being in a relationship with the funder. And that's what we want to talk about. When we talk about getting money, we are going into a relationship with that funder. So let's start it out as clean and clear and transparent and extend trust on our side, so they'll extend that trust and hopefully a check from their side. All right. And then another thing that people miss, and it's okay if you don't do audits right now, not every organization does, but keep in mind, I don't know if you can hear my chair squeaking. I'm moving, my chair squeaks. Keep in mind that this is a long-term investment, whether it's an investment of our time, investment of our money, investment of our resources. So what we want to think about is, okay, right now we don't have annual audits because it's kind of expensive, and we're a really, we're not a high dollar nonprofit right now, but we're going to be, and we want to be able to apply for all grants. And if we don't have annual audits, there's maybe 50% of the grants out there that we can't even apply for because we don't have that piece of the puzzle in place. So talk with your board. When can let's put it on our part of our long-term strategy, that in order to be able to open the door up to more and higher grant opportunities, we need to have an audit. And just build it in, okay, well, it might be 5 years from now, but hey, 5 years from now is going to get here. So let's start working toward that. And that's another piece of the puzzle when we talk to really getting into the grant world and building up your organization. All right. So here's what we're going to talk about now. I love these little spots where we just stop and say, here's what we're going to talk about now. Identifying your grant need. This is one of my favorite parts of what we do. Setting goals, plan the work the plan, and plan the work again. So when I meet with clients, I love helping them do their wish list. So when we talk about your funding needs, I call it the Christmas wish list. And as soon as I do that, it starts breaking down barriers. Sometimes, and I hope you've never experienced this, but I have in the past at times, people just, they're very passionate about their own area of what they do. And so, if they take care of facilities, they're going to be fighting for facilities. If they're out there with children during the summer camp, they're going to be fighting for all the things that they need. And what we want to do is take the fight out of this conversation and make it fun. And so here's the goal in one meeting, and you can set the tone ahead of time. We want to list 3 to 5 priority funding areas that our organization needs in 1 hour or less. And this is our Christmas wish list. And when I call it that, it opens up a sense of generosity. People are generous at Christmas, they give. And so instead of feeling like I have to be in my quarter and battle for my dollar, I can say, oh, okay, let's look at as an organization as a whole what we need. And then let's get them on the paper and really talk about what's the highest priority. And so let's look at, here's an example of a funding priority list. And these folks, they didn't have any problem. They had a good time. By the end of the meeting, we were all celebrating the fact that we might get us a new roof soon and we're going to get some equipment and supplies. And oftentimes facility needs will take, especially if your roof's falling in, right? So these folks decided that their number one priority was building and facility needs. They need a new roof. They need $20,000. When did they need it? 2 years ago, because we got a tarp on the top of the roof with the cinder block on it, praying that the wind don't blow it away, blow the whole roof off. We got buckets in the gym catching the water. But realistically, we can keep trudging along, and hopefully we'll have enough money. We'll get this grant in place and have our roof by the end of 2025. Please, Lord, let it be sooner. But if not, that's our target date. And then, we also need a new HVAC system. That's going to be $10,000. And this one should be able to make it until 2026. We need equipment. And so when you talk about equipment, make sure you're talking about the right dollar figure. State and federal grants will list equipment at $5,000 or more. So that's your equipment list. So we need some outdoor. Oh, sorry. I need to fix my slide here. This goes under supplies. So we need some equipment. We're going to change this to $5,000 because we need some outdoor equipment for the kiddos. And instead of 2,000, that needs to say 5,000. I always find one little thing I need to fix as I go through and teach. So anyway, so that's what we need. And we need to know it's going to be for the summer youth camp, the age group, the number of participants, and when we need that. We need it by February so that I know with the equipment I have when I'm starting to do my advertising for the summer camps. And then under supplies, so that's going to be less than 5,000. We need a laptop for the new youth service director, $1,000, and she's coming on board in October. We need some art supplies, $500 for the after school program. We know the age groups. We know it's for the 25-26 school year, and there's 60 kids. So we just want to, don't spend more than an hour doing this. So if you set the expectation at the beginning, then you're going to have some good results as you get towards the end of that meeting. All right. How much time am I going to spend on grant research? You can get lost in a black hole. Don't do that. So give yourself an hours. Like, I'm going to spend 10 hours looking for those 3 priority areas: facilities, equipment, supplies. Okay, or 20 hours. You may get to the 5-hour point and go, whoa, I under budgeted. When do I plan to conduct the research? Get this on your timeline. How much can I spend? So if you're not going to do that and you're going to pay for someone to do that, how much can we spend on grant research or potentially later on grant writing? And then how will I search for grants available to me? So when we talk about searching for grants, you can go to grants.gov if you're looking for federal grants. You can go to your state grant website, and depending on your state, most of the time they're broken up among the different agencies in the state. So you can look for that under the specific agency. I like if I'm looking for foundation grants, I really like the foundation directory. It's a little pricey. So it may not make sense for your organization, but there's a free version of it that you can at least get the high level information and find some foundations that way. And then there's lots of platforms out there. The one I like the best is Grant Watch right now because it has a lot of it's only like $200 a year. Um, and it has federal, state, foundation, local grants that are currently open. All right, the 990. So if you let's say there's a local foundation that you're aware of just because this is your world and you know that you've heard that so and so down the road got a grant from them. In your website browser, you can type in the name of that foundation and then just put 990. And it will often send you to a link where you can open up because they're a public foundation and they're giving grants and it has to be public information and you can look at their tax form. When you do that, I want you to go to the supplementary information section. Okay, supplementary information and go to item number 2. There's this cute little box right here that says check here if the foundation only makes contributions to pre-selected charitable organizations. If that box is checked, then you have no business sending them a cold application. Now, there's still ways to get in the door if you want to know, get to know somebody on the board, make your pitch, get an invitation to apply. You can do that. I've had people that I went to school, they looked at the board list because it's actually in this document, but oftentimes it's online. And they went, "Oh, I went to school with her daughter. Let me call her daughter." And they got an invitation to apply. So a lot of times it's networking and it's building relationships that can get you there, but I would say across the board, don't send cold applications to foundations. They need to know you. They need to expect that you're sending that application. If you've never called them before, pick the phone up, make a phone call, start sending some emails. But you do want to have a live voice talking to a live voice if at all possible before you send something. And sometimes they'll be like, "Hey, I'd love to talk to you about your." I mean, that's why they're there. They want to know what you're doing for their community and the population. All right, so let's keep going. And I know I'm probably preaching to the choir for most of you guys on this. The other thing under the 990 and supplemental information is that they list that year's grant recipients. So this is a great way to get an intro or to make a connection or to find out about an organization, especially if somebody on here you're like, "Oh, hey, the Railroad Park Foundation, Sandy's over there. I know her. She and I go to church together. They got $10,000 last year. Let me holler at Sandy and find out, what's up with this foundation, if I can get any insight." So that's a great way to do it. And also, this number here gives you a really good idea of what to ask for. If you've never received a grant from an organization, don't ask for $3 million if their typical award is 10,000, right? And also the other thing that we can sometimes do is like our organization for the last 5 years historically has had $100,000 in operating budget. And then all of a sudden there's this $2 million opportunity and we want to apply for it. You don't really have the fiscal infrastructure to apply for that. And you don't have a history showing that you have that big a chunk of money coming in that you can handle it and disperse it correctly. So you kind of want to build your history when it comes to grants and utilization of other people's money so that you have a strong history and you can show, yes, we know how to operate with grant funds. We know how to expend them. We know how to track them. We know how to report them. All right, work the plan. So you've conducted your research. You're going to record what you find. So everything that you look at, I like Excel. I'm kind of an Excel geek, so I keep my list in an Excel sheet. And it's got all these different categories, linked to the website and how much the funding is, and notes on the description and notes on the funder and what their priorities are to make sure that my priority list matches theirs. So, if they only really target youth as a population, but my population is disabled adults, that's not going to be a good match. We have to match and align with what the funder is offering money for. Select the right grant for your organization and priority area. Read the notice. So here's our big light bulb. Read the notice of funding. So that's the guidance or the NOFO. Understand the grant's objectives and requirements before you start writing. You can save yourself a ton of time by really paying attention to the guidance. Establish your eligibility as an organization and your priority area alignment before you start writing. Make sure that you're eligible as an organization. Make sure you're eligible in your location. There may be a great opportunity, but it's 2 counties over and they only give in their county. Don't write a grant for that. Unless you have a personal invitation and you've already spoken to the board and they said, okay, we'll consider something in your county because it matches our target population. Don't go, well, we're close enough, let's try. You're wasting your time. Don't do that. And it just leads to disappointment. All right, so plan the work again. So we've done our work plan, develop a work plan with a timeline, an action-based plan with deadlines and documents needed. Make the plan visible so everybody on your team is going to have a copy of your plan. Stick to your plan. And eventually, as you do this more and more, you're going to be developing your own process. So develop it and own it. Like I love my work plans. I love my Excel sheet. I have my target places where I'm going to go research. Just own it and just hone that skill. And the more you do it, the more successful you are in the grant world. So you are going to get a copy of a work plan and a grant calendar. I keep my grant calendar for each of my clients, and it tells me each quarter what I'm looking at for them. So I pay attention and don't miss any opportunities. Now, I'm going to give you this. This is coming to you in your slides. So we're going to go a little bit quickly over the next few minutes. I'm just going to skip a few slides and go towards the end. But I do want to let you know that, that all of these things are talked about over the next few slides. What's important about a cover letter, a letter of inquiry, an abstract, a needs statement. But I want to make sure that I cover the most important parts when we're talking. So sometimes they just ask you for a cover letter to start with. Like, we want a letter of intent or a cover letter that says in one page. Sometimes they'll say one page. So you have to be really succinct and make sure you include your impact. So yes, you're going to say who you are, your mission, how much you want, what you're going to do with it. But you're going to say also what we've done last year or over the last several years impacting this group of people. And so that first step, that initial piece, again, don't send it cold. Make sure you've reached out to your grant funder, but then send that in and make sure your board president or your director has signed that. And again, with the letter of inquiry, it's kind of the same step, but you can include a little more information. Just make sure that you avoid any flowery jargon and you note your alignment. So one of the things I start out with, whether it's a letter of inquiry or a cover letter, I say, thank you so much for serving our mutual population of children with disabilities in Pennsylvania. So I really appreciate it. I know that last year you guys, dispersed X number of dollars to make sure these children have the ability to go to school and engage in sports or prepare for the workplace or whatever it is. Note it and thank them and say, we align, we serve the same population, and here's some things that we bring to the table, and we'd love to partner with you guys. And you can say that in just a couple sentences, but it grabs their attention and lets them know, first of all, these people know who we are. They're not just saying, hey, give me 10,000 bucks. They know who we are. They have the same service population. So use this as a time to connect, not just ask. The statement of needs, make sure that you justify why you're providing your services and make sure you have data. So, sometimes we assume, we're like, well, they know kids need helmets when they play ball. Yeah, they do, but let's use some statistics and say how many brain injuries have been avoided because of helmets last year, or how many injuries were minor that could have been serious, and use data that is not just the local paper is not what you want to do here. You want to use, Department of Health data or Sports Academy data or whatever the primary organization is that collects this data. and cite it and reference it. It makes you stand out. And you're like, dang, that's a lot of work. Yeah, it is. It makes you stand out, and it makes you it makes people know these people know what they're doing. They're not just saying we really need to help our kids. Of course, everybody knows we need to help our kids. Let's be more specific and really use the data to tell a story. And especially when you get to the state and the federal level, if you don't have the data there, you're not competitive. And if you're not using the right resources, you're not competitive. All right, I'm going to skip ahead because I want to go over the last couple of things about grant tips. You get all of these lovely slides with all the information, but I want to say this, grant tips. Okay, the golden rule. He who has the gold makes the rules. So we got to play by their rules. Grant makers don't just fund good programs, but good organizations. And we talked about that already. And here's what they're looking for. So when they're sitting at the decision table, they're looking for high quality programs that meet a real need in the community. That's where our data comes in. That's where our statistics come in and our references. Do you have a track record of success? And can you prove that? Do you have a good reputation in the community? You know they're going to have conversations right there. You may know about this organization. Are they coming to the workforce board meetings? Are they coming to this meeting? You know, if there's a big group of people that come together that to work on one specific thing, be engaged. If you get invited to some of those things, be engaged at the community level. And then what kind of leadership does your organization have? Is it a strong board? Do your staff have the experience and track record of success? And that goes back to what I was talking about with your resumes. Do you have a strong organizational and financial infrastructure? They want to see your budget they might want to see your current operating budget and last year's budget. They want to see that audit. They want to see there are no findings in your audit. Can you manage those grant funds? They want to see the resume for your fiscal director or whoever your finance person is. Does your request align with the grant maker's funding priority? Wait, I'm going to back up one step real quick. They also may look at your cost per participant. So if you ask for $100,000 and you're only serving 5 participants, that's not a good ratio. And if that's the fact because of an equipment piece or something, you have to explain that very clearly. That would be a unique situation, but you have to explain why that cost per participant is so high on the cost side and low on the participant side. So just make sure you're paying attention to your numbers. Do you have a plan to demonstrate success for this money that you're getting ready to get? How are you going to evaluate your program? And how is it going to be sustainable? Is this short term or is this going to sustain on out? And you have a plan for increasing your revenue from other ways so that you don't just have 1 year of service or 2 year of service that you're going to continue. That will make you stand out. Not everybody asks about sustainability, but if you go ahead and offer it, it helps you stand out as a applicant. Do you have a record of following grant guidelines and meeting reporting deadlines? That's very important. We don't want a funder to have to bang your door down to get that final report. You need to be way ahead of that. If you have questions, ask a month ahead of the deadline. Hey, I have some questions about this final report. So those kind of behaviors help set you up for success in the grant world. All right, qualities of a well-written proposal. Be brief and concise. Use subtitles. Use subtle creativity. So if you can put pictures or quotes or bullets, graphs, whatever's allowable, make sure it's within the allowable criteria of what's called for in your application. And then be fully responsive to the questions. If they ask a question, answer it exactly what they're asking for. You can add more, but make sure you answer their question. Write in layman's terms unless technical language is required. Make sure all your required documents are attached. Use up to date and cite your references with your data. Make sure you're not copying and pasting from yes, like your organization history, that's going to be the same, but your alignment with this foundation may not be. You might have to tweak that. So make sure that everything in this application speaks directly to this grant opportunity. Make sure the data in your narrative matches the data in your budget. That's horrible. If you write like your narrative first and then do your budget and then send it in and you figure, oh man, I changed the budget, but I forgot to change the narrative. Make sure your pages are numbered. And the very, very last thing is grammar and spelling. Yes, it's important, but it's not the most critical thing. So when I think about where am I spending the most of my time, it's being fully responsive. It's making sure I have touched base with the grantor. They know they're going to get this application. So relationship comes first. Making sure I'm fully responsive. That comes way above grammar and spelling. And always, I should add this here, always have somebody else double check this. Let somebody else read it. Make sure you've got somebody on your grant team that is your, what I call QC, quality control. Start early. Look at this statistic here, and I noted where it came from. 85% of successful grant seekers have had contact with the program officer, even at the federal level. I often email questions to the program officer. We may not be buddies, but they know my name because I've emailed questions to clarify before as I'm going along when I have questions. All right. So now I want to stop and make sure, oh, this is the last slide. I'll make sure you get this one. Nice matters. People ultimately choose to do business with people they like, and everyone likes someone who appreciates them, and that goes back to thanking them for their service to the community and to the service population that you're serving. People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you make them feel. And so if I put on my encourager hat, I'll put on my gratitude hat when I'm interacting with my staff, with my board, with potential funders, with folks that show up for the webinar. It brightens me, it brightens our work. I'm more creative. When I'm and put my gratitude hat and my encourager hat on, I am more creative. I am more productive. So it goes both ways, but I do want you just keep that in mind. And I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to shut up and answer any questions that you might have.
April, we have a question in the chat from Elizabeth that
Okay.
says, will some funders consider a financial review in lieu of a full financial audit?
Yes. I want to shout out to Elizabeth. I do know Elizabeth, and I'm going to give just a real quick, I hope it's okay to share this. I'll apologize after. She works with a client, and this is a great situation. If some folks can't afford simple grants or can't afford or just don't want to pay for full services like that, they hire someone like a retired teacher, or they hire someone that has the skills and the knowledge and that's willing to almost volunteer. And then I work with that person, and we collaborate. I QC some things. I might help with research, but that person is the main grant writer. So Elizabeth, yes, yes and no. So you have to check with the funder and ask if they will accept that financial review in lieu of a financial audit. But when you do that and other companies are submitting a full financial audit, it really puts you at a disadvantage. They may check the box and say, yeah, we'll accept it, but it's not an A plus. It might be an A or a B. Yeah. All right. Any other questions? Can you touch on how to meet really low? Oh, yeah. Okay. So really low character limits. That's challenging. Honestly, I think it's more challenging than when they say I have 15 pages. I like to tell our story big time, and use lots of data. So one of the things you do is have to hone in. If you have a low character count, you have to really answer their question. That's number one. So make sure that you have answered everything in that question that they're wanting to know. And then if you have 10 characters left, you might say thank you. It is challenging. And the other thing is that's a good place to pull in your team member, like your co-grant writer or your QC person, because you can get it. Sometimes I get it to a certain spot and I'm like, I can't cut anything else. I need help. Oh, the other thing I really like is Grammarly. So, and you can use the free version of Grammarly, but I got the, I don't know, it's not much. It's pretty inexpensive to use the professional version. And they will give you tips on, it might just cut 2 words out of 3 sentences, but that's all you needed. So I would definitely recommend running everything through Grammarly, and you can decide. You don't have to accept their change suggestions, but it might cut your character count down. Okay. Yeah, I know. It is challenging to tell the story. That so here's the thing. So you've got an application that has all these limitations on what you can tell. So I can guarantee you that that panelist is also going to go to your website. If you say you've got Facebook, they're going to go Facebook. They're going to go other places if they're really considering your organization for funding. So you're not only your application or your letter of interest or your letter, your cover letter or whatever, that's just to get to the point where they're more interested. And then make sure that you've told your story in other places that's publicly accessible. Please share advice and suggestions for new organizations. One with a small, oops, yeah, let me scroll back up. One with a small board and no staff. Oh, yeah. Big Lots, Walmart, start small. There are organizations, there are companies out there that you can start with. And also when you do, especially like Walmart, and there's a couple others that require you to be registered in a platform. So it's a vetting platform for nonprofits, and you have to go in there and register and put your information in. And then when the funder goes and looks you up, then you are officially in there. It's kind of the same concept as sam.gov. When we come to, they want to know who you are. You're a real organization. You really do have your 501c3. You really do have a board. You're real. So yeah, I would start small.
April, Chris has a really good question.
Okay.
Are there ways to vet these grant awarding organizations? I mean, I know Chris's situation, we've talked, but they got a $25,000 grant and almost kind of missed it and didn't really think it was real, kind of like it was spam email.
Oh, wow. Okay. But you thought it was spam email? But someone in your organization applied for that grant.
No. So
Oh,
it was a donor's choice grant that went through a third party, like similar, I guess, to the work that you're doing. They helped to find and award grants. So we had no contact with this person. We have no clue who the actual donor was. They just emailed us and said, "Hey, we've got $25,000 for you. We need your like tax information and your like bank account information," which felt very much like a spam message. And they
yeah.
emailed 3 or 4 times, basically every week, which again also felt spammy. And then all of a sudden a check just showed up because they had looked us up because we had filed our taxes the correct way. So we were very fortunate and thankful, but caught off guard because we're like, this feels like something that we would not normally just reply to.
Absolutely. Honestly, I haven't had that situation happen before. I haven't had that question, but it sounds like you handled it correctly. Um, the the foundation directory that I mentioned, it's on one of the slides earlier. They have very specific. They have information about organizations if they're a public. I mean, if they're a private foundation and they have to report through a 990, so they'll be on there. I mean, honestly, I would just kind of use my contacts. I would call them directly and then ask around. I don't, other than the foundation director or pulling up their 990, that's the only two I know of. Brittany, do you have anything on that?
Honestly, Chris and I tried to navigate it together, and I think they handled
Okay.
it amazingly, given the information that they knew after the fact. And kind of how do you think that donor when you don't even know through a third party kind
I
of?
don't know. Right. That's amazing. Congratulations. I hope somebody sends me a $25,000 check.
Thanks. It all went straight to like a CD account, so it's just sitting in the corner accruing interest.
Yeah, wonderful. That's a good problem to have, but it is scary because there's so much financial scam out there, right? You're like,
Absolutely.
heck, I'm not giving you my bank account. So
For
anyway,
time's sake, and so for the
okay,
people that have to hop off, if y'all will hold on just a second and let me give you some more information, and then April, if you're willing to hang around for a few
sure,
minutes and answer a few more
absolutely.
questions. So thank y'all so much for joining us today. You will be getting an email with me with a link to today's presentation and recording, a short 3-question survey, and an opportunity to sign up to be a Carey Center nonprofit affiliate. The Carey Center Nonprofit Affiliate Program currently serves over 350 nonprofits in Alabama and beyond, and offers educational programming, professional development, and networking opportunities to nonprofit professionals. Carey Center nonprofit affiliates are the first to learn about upcoming programming, and membership is free. If you are local or willing to travel, our fall networking event for nonprofit professionals is September 24th from 5 to 7 at Well-Read Second Story, their new location on North Donahue. We invite you to mix and mingle with nonprofit professionals, board members, volunteers, donors, and community members. We also encourage you to take this opportunity to treat yourself, your staff, your board members, and network with nonprofit professionals in the beautiful new location of Well-Read Second Story. We are excited to announce we are offering the Carey Center Nonprofit Professional Certificate. This is an online non-degreed certificate offered through a partnership with the Auburn University Office of Professional and Continuing Education and Merit Nonprofit Professional Development, and provides a tailored curriculum for nonprofit professionals. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope to see you at one of our monthly virtual programs or in person for our nonprofit training series, currently traveling the state. Any other questions for April?
Okay, wonderful. This was great. Thank you, Brittany, so much.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we hope to see y'all soon.
All right,
Bye.
bye.